Salutations, my friends. Hello, how are you doing today? My name is Maria. This is Love Pray Paint, and today we are going to be learning about my favorite and most used brushes. I have quite a few. These are the ones that I use the most or recently have used the most. So we'll go through pretty much all of these brushes, tell you the names, tell you how to use them, show you examples on how to use them. I'm just going to be doing a really quick painting along the way. It's not a tutorial. It's just to mainly show you how to use these brushes and what the functions are and how I like to use them. So my first choice, or not my first choice, the brush I'm telling you about first is a mop brush. I just recently bought this, but it's literally changed the way I paint, like completely. It has made it way more effortless and just easier to blend. And that's what I mainly use this brush for, is for blending. Usually in skies or water or that kind of thing, when I want to have like a really nice, like a gradation, like for a sunset, something of that nature, this is great for blending all the colors together. So I actually use this in like two different ways. One, sometimes I'll just like slap the paint down on the canvas first and then I go through and I blend it, or you can just use this the entire time and go through and blend it like that. I actually prefer the first way of doing it, so you can just take any old brush to get the paint down on the canvas usually. To get paint down on canvases, this is another one that I use a lot. It's almost like a chuck brush, just one of these like flat kind of brushes. It sort of looks like a, you know, for painting walls. But these are great, these bigger ones, to get paint down on your canvas really quickly. I'm using paper, so stuff might not blend as well as if you were using a canvas, but it's just to kind of show you. So I'm going to do almost like an ombre, well, not really an ombre, but just 3 different colors. And I'm going to keep the darker colors towards the top and then go down to the light colors. Now that we have that slapped down on our piece of paper, we'll go through and we'll use our mop brush to blend it all together. So how I do this is I take a little bit of water on the tip of the brush, just a little bit, not a lot, because this like holds lots of water and lots of pigment too. That's why I don't really like to and then I squeeze it out, or you can just tap it on the side of your thing, but you don't want that much water on this, just enough to carry the paint. And then I take it and I fluff it up on my on a paper towel. And so what I do is I take a really light hand, I hold it from the bottom of the paintbrush, and I just sort of blend, like if there's a line or clouds or whatever I need to blend, I take this and I blend the colors together. This is kind of dry a little bit because it's paper, so like I said, it's sort of hard to blend it together. But what it does is give you a really great, you can go from side to side, or you can do like little circles like this to blend it. It doesn't really matter, it's just kind of whatever look you're going for. And it gives a really awesome kind of airbrush effect to your painting, which I think is spectacular. I mean, who doesn't want that kind of effect without having to hassle with an airbrush machine? I mean, I certainly don't want to mess with an airbrush machine, but so this is just a great way to kind of blend your colors together. So we'll do it this way now down here, back and forth, just so you can see how that looks. And you want to have a really light hand. You don't want to like push. You want to just like feather it, like light as a feather. You guys ever play that when you were little? Light as a feather, stiff as the board. I used to play that all the time. So you can kind of see how these are sort of blending together. And it's so effortless, like you don't hardly have to, you don't have to hardly do anything. And if you want to blend even more, like a more blended look, or almost like a cloudy, hazy look, you can take like a tiny bit of like white paint. And I think these work best with these fluid paints, these kind of blending brushes, these golden fluid acrylics. That's what I've been using lately, and I like them a lot. They're a little more expensive than, let's say, like Liquitex Basics or something like that, but I think that for me, it helps me a lot more. So I just try to take some of the pigment off just because I don't want big splotches of white. And so you're just going to do the same thing in between the colors, and you can actually form clouds this way as well. But we're just using this to blend these together, so you can kind of see how that works. See how it gives that kind of like hazy look, which is, I think, is really cool. That was a lot of paint. That was a lot. Way too much. You swipe off if you get too much, and then cool thing about the brush that just blend it all together and it won't even matter. And if it starts to get dry, just spray your canvas, which will make it even easier. I'm not going to spray this because it's paper. I don't want super wet paper because then it's going to start buckling really bad. So you just want a really light hand. I think you kind of get the point of how to use this brush. This is what I love this brush for. It's making these really beautiful kind of like sunsets. We'll do some white down there too, just so it doesn't look so blotchy. Anyway, that's kind of how I blend the colors together. Now I'll show you the brushes that I use the most next, and I usually use these the most when I'm doing clouds. I will now show you the brushes that I use the most for doing clouds and that I like the most. I really like these round brush, these rounds for doing clouds, because you can kind of dot on the color, whatever color, if you're doing white or if you're doing, colored clouds, whatever you want. I'm just going to do white clouds today just so you guys can kind of see the point. I'm not going to use this big one because it's a small area, so I don't really need this. But even just getting paint down onto the canvas, like if I'm, this makes it easier to blend. So let's say I was doing like some patches of grasses or something, I'd probably like use this, or water, I'd use this. So I really love using this for that kind of thing. And then the same deal. This is what I use to like do clouds or water or landscape. I love these. And then the other brush that I really love, I use this for like everything. It's a scrumbler brush, and I have the small one. You can get these larger or even smaller. And I love these for blending clouds together. And I love the scrumbler brushes for blending clouds and any areas on a thing that you need like highly blended. Especially if you're doing like portrait work, this is great for blending in different like dimensions and colors into the face, so you don't get like harsh lines. Let's say you were doing the shading under the eye bags. You would use something like this to blend that color into the other colors, so it would be really seamless looking. Anyway, so this is new, but I've been using it like non-stop. I can link these down below too with like the brands. These ones I don't remember what they are because they're so old, but this one and some of my newer ones I'll link below. How I use these, I kind of use them dry, especially because I use these fluid paints. You don't really need a lot of water. And what I do is maybe I should add a little bit of dark in here just so we have a shadow on our cloud. I'll use purple for that. Just a little. So I would dot on the color like this. So I got my my dark. And I work in small sections when I do this because with this blender brush, you have to work quick. These dry fast too. So then I'd probably take a smaller brush to do my highlights of the cloud, and I like to keep, the dark underneath. This isn't a painting tutorial, but just to explain it. And the light on the top, not always, it depends on what I'm painting. And you know, I'll put a light and a dark, and to blend those two together, I take this scrumbler, which you can like wet the tip of it just a little bit and dab it off. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this with a really light hand, just like the mop brush, and in between these two colors, you can blend them like this. And you blend it out and it looks spectacular. So when I'm making clouds, I do them in several layers. Like this, I wouldn't just leave this. I would blend the whole thing like this, like so it gets nice and airbrushy looking. And then I'd go in for like an additional layer, kind of like the sky. I wouldn't normally just do a sky that quickly. It would take like several layers to get it the way I would actually want it. So that's kind of how I do that. But I'll make a couple of these and kind of fast forward it so you can kind of see the process and how it goes. And it just to show you how, you know, I use different brushes and why I like them. Okay, so after you kind of get like a couple base clouds on, what you can actually do, you don't have to use two brushes. You can literally just, you know, put the smallest amount on the tip of the scrumbler and kind of go, you know, add your highlights in on the top of your clouds. So the color is more, so you can see the color, it's not as opaque. So this is kind of how I do that. Use it in the same way, it's just that I have color directly on top of it, and I just use like the smallest amount. A lot goes a long way. You know, you can really like stretch this so far. See, you can just keep on going with it if you want. The reason I love this sort of like blended, airy look, like especially if you're doing stuff like this, you want those like kind of floaty clouds. Look like how easy that is. It's just so super easy to use it. You know, and it just gives it that really beautiful sort of airbrushy look. And like you don't have to do any work, you just kind of put it on there. You know, and you can just keep layering your color until you have like the dimension you want and the kind of, if you want it super hazy or super pigmented. I just love this for that. I just think it's so great making clouds. I mean, it's great for a lot of things, but it just makes making clouds so effortless. Like, easy, and you get that beautiful like haze just without having to do anything. Which, like, who doesn't want that? So let's add some highlights on these just to make them more stand out more. See, and how you can blend it into the cloud like that. I just think that's so cool. And that one looks a little jacked up, but it doesn't really matter. Like I said, this isn't a painting tutorial. This is just to kind of get the idea of how like awesome it is to use these sort of, this little scrumbler. I just love them. So people keep asking me how I get, you know, my clouds, how I get them. Well, this is how I do it. With this little thingy. And actually, I think I learned this from Chuck Black. I think he's the one that I saw that used this, and I was like, oh, I gotta have that. Anyway, so let's add a little more color into the bottom of these, because I sort of lost it. So when you're doing your shadows, you can just kind of blend it up, the light. Usually you want to work dark and the light, but you know, when you're doing layering like this, it doesn't really matter, and you can go directly into that too. You have to be careful though, you don't want too much on there. And you can kind of just do it that way. I really prefer to do the dark first and then the light, but I got got carried away with the white, so I have to add some dark back in there. Anyway, it just, like I said, makes it so easy to blend. Super duper easy. And I feel like you even use like less paint when you know, do it this way. I think so, at least. Do glue on the other ones. Just to carry some of that color over. You know, and you just can keep layering as much as you want. If you want more white and more white on there. I just love this for blending. Alright, I'm getting a little carried away here with the clouds, so I should probably stop myself before they start looking crazy. Anyway, you get the point. Why I love the rounds and the scrumblers. Okay, so I know this doesn't look perfect, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so my next favorite brushes are, I'll show you these, are these angled flats. In any size, it doesn't really matter, but these are my favorite thing for doing like trees or even sometimes like mountains, anything that I need a straight edge for. I really don't like regular straight flats because I just feel like I have much more control when I'm making lines with these, and they make these in really super tiny sizes. I don't really like those and I don't really use them, only because what I normally use when I'm doing my branches and stuff, that nature, are these script liner brushes. I find these like incredible for making really great like lines and branches and anything you would need that for, even in like water. Making waves with this makes it really effortless if you're putting highlights on it. And then also fan brush, I feel like if you're an acrylic painter or any painter, the fan brush is your best friend. Like I feel like your life will not be complete until you have a fan brush. One, it's great for making grass. You can swoop up, make grass with this. You can make little like bushes and details. You can also use these to make clouds. I don't really prefer that, but I see a lot of people doing that. And then also a little filbert, a little tiny filbert. I don't really like big filberts. I mean, those can be great. I think Art Sherva calls them the cat's tongue. I just prefer rounds for doing anything like that because I think it actually gives less, if you don't want any brush marks, I think the rounds give less brush marks. But this for, like, let's say I was making up a tree and I wanted to fill in the area of a small area, fill it in. I like these because one, they don't leave any lines, and two, they carry a lot of pigment, so you can get done a little bit faster. So we're gonna make some palm trees, just a silhouette thing, nothing fancy, using these brushes. So we'll start off with my bigger angled. I'm probably not gonna use the small one. And I'm gonna use this how I use any flat angled, just a bit of water on the tip of it, just a little dunk, tap it off on my paper towel, tiny bit of paint on the tip, and this is also golden, which is great for, you know, making lines. I love the fluid paint. So I'm just gonna do a couple palm trees just so we can use some of these. So I'm gonna start just going up. See how easy that is when you have, I literally hold it kind of like upside down. Like I have the point at the bottom and then I drag up. I'm sure a lot of people go down, but when I'm doing trees, I like to go from the bottom to the top. So I'm gonna make the trunk a little bit thicker and go on the other side and just push down a little bit and then lift up as I get up to the top. So I probably actually won't even really use this filbert. I just wanted to show you it because I guess maybe we can fix the tree branch with it a little bit. Same deal, a little bit on it, and then, you know, to fill in small areas and small details, it's great. This doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm just kind of trying to do it quick because this goes. So I'm going to do a couple of these little trees here. I'm working off of a picture from Pixabay, but like I said, this isn't a tutorial, so we don't really have to worry about it, where it comes from. Just add some little guys down here. Just for some, I mean, I don't need them to be perfect or anything. Maybe a little bit thicker on these taller ones. But see how easy that is? That's why I love these angled ones. They're so easy to make a nice line with. So effortless. Need to fill in this one a little bit. Want some color in here. Okay. So now that we got a couple of those in there, we can start working on the top. So now we'll make the palms for our palm trees, and I'm going to use the script liner brush to do that. So I just put it on the very tip, and the reason mine's curved like that is because I left it sitting in water. Do not do that, otherwise you will ruin your brushes. You know, if you leave them overnight, you get lazy and you don't really want to feel like washing them. Well, that's kind of a problem because then you ruin them. So we'll just do a couple of dashes here. This does not have to be anything fancy because this is to show you how I like to use the brushes. So when you use these, keep a really light hand because if you try to push, your line will get all crazy. So like, just use a really light touch and make sure it's always wet because if it starts skipping against the canvas, your line will get really wonky. So you want to keep it, especially if you're using heavy body paints, keep your brush pretty wet because otherwise it's not gonna go anywhere. It's gonna stay right where it is, or your line's gonna get crazy. So I'll just go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll get back to the other brush. So we can kind of go through and see how to use our fan brush. They're great for doing so many things. They're great for trees, for grass, like I said. They're great for like details like on mountains, if you want to put the little snow caps on mountains. I mean, I can show that in a different tutorial sometime, but what I do is like all of my brushes, just dip the tip, not the whole thing, just the very tip in the water, and put the paint on the tips of these. And I don't like these brushes too wet because I feel like it gives too much separation in between the bristles, which is great if you're doing grass, but if you're doing something like this, you don't want too much. So I try to keep it more dry. I don't do completely dry, just a tiny bit of water. So you have something like this, and then how you want to use these, I use them in the same manner as I use everything. I usually hold my brushes like at the end, and I use a really light hand. Like I hardly press. I never like shove brushes unless I'm really trying to blend something. I don't really ever do that. See how effortless that is to make this cute little palm? Just kind of swoop and swoop it down. Just makes it so easy. You never want that much paint on these because they get gunky and they goop up. And I would love to even have one of these that my paint's getting dry, that was even smaller, like a tiny little fan brush. That would be awesome. I've never seen a tiny little fan brush, but if you guys know where I can get one, let me know. I put way too much paint on that. So if you accidentally do that, just kind of scrape it off. And like every brush, I always try to use a light hand and kind of do one of those. See how effortless that is? I just love that. I Actually, really do wish this was smaller because it's getting wonky, but you know, and if you don't have enough paint on there, that can happen too. It can get sort of wonky. Anyway, so that's kind of how you use that. I can show you a little bit of grass. I didn't really want grass on this just because it didn't really make any sense, but I'll just show you. So if you're doing grass, you just kind of pull up like that. You just pull up from the bottom, and it just does all the work for you. They actually make these fan brushes that have little gaps in between them that I think are super helpful. I don't know what they're called, but they have like spacing in between them that makes making things like grass and that sort of thing even more, you know, more easy, more effortless. See if you get too much paint, what happens is you get little splotches like that. You get too much paint on your brush and it's not wet enough, and you push too hard, you end up doing that, which obviously you don't want. Well, at least I don't want that, but it's on there now. So I'll just go all the way across since we did it anyway. So that's kind of how you use that, and then I'm just gonna finish this, fast forward it, and then I'll say goodbye. So this is our final painting. I hope you learned about different kinds of brushes and what I love to use them for, and I hope it was really helpful for you, and I also hope you have a great weekend, and I